Well, welcome to Crown and Connections with Rob Clemons. This is a Monarch Roofing production, and we are very excited today because we have a very well-known author, Thomas Blackwell, with us, and I'm very, very excited to have Thomas on the show to talk about the book. Welcome, Thomas. How are you doing today?
Life is beautiful, Rob. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
And I love the entrance. This is one of the things you talk about in your book. You talk about having a great greeting and passing on that positive energy. So all my managers at my work here have been doing the same thing. So we're excited to have you on for sure.
Fantastic.
Awesome, awesome. Well, let's get into a little bit about yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about where you're from originally and how you're born and raised and all that good stuff?
Absolutely. Well, I was born and raised like most people, and grateful for my opportunities that I had there. I grew up in a home, very loving parents, and in a small town in southeast Arizona. And my parents, something was going on with my father, and nobody knew about it. He had a brain tumor and became a little bit abusive, and because of that, my mom decided to separate it from him when I was age 6. And within a year, he had passed away from brain tumor. And so nobody knew that. And so there was just some opportunities early on in my life to forgive, to seek understanding. And so it's certainly not unique to me, but those are things that shaped me. And so grew up with much of a single mom throughout my life, which women are amazing. They can fill all these roles, and again, not unique to me, but it allowed me to step up. I had 2 older brothers and a younger sister, but there was some turning points in my life, Rob, where because of these things, I began to act out a little bit. I began to act out in a sense that giving excuses to, well, my dad died, and then my mom met this other guy, and all of a sudden you have 2 new siblings. So, she shows up with another guy and say, hey, here's your new brother and sister. And so again, you're not unique to me, but we deal with these things. And what it caused me to do, or I let it allow me to do, is act out and rebel a little bit. But that all changed in 5th grade, man. That all changed for me. I had a beautiful teacher that set me straight. And as you know, we're at Christmas time here, and we talk about gifts. And I've received a lot of gifts, probably like you have throughout your life. And it's, but these aren't, the gifts that I'm thinking of aren't wrapped in wrapping paper with a bow on it. These are gifts where people changed my life, and there's kind of a story behind it. I can share that if you want me to. There's in the 5th grade, I was acting out a bit, and my mom just met this guy. Now I was gonna have a stepdad, and my dad just passed away. So it was like a crutch. It was like a disclaimer, because my dad died, and I could go do things I felt like just to get attention. And one particular day, 5th grade, I would organize pencil bands behind the teacher's back, pencil tapping bands, and I would organize the whole class to fall out of their chair at 3 o'clock exactly. So
Awesome.
so I knew I was a leader, just leader for the wrong things, and one day it all came to a head. So one guy sat in front of me, a young 5th grader. I was the same age, but his name was Brian, and he pasted down his hair in front, but this guy forgot to paste down the back of his hair. And so it stood up like a peacock, and he sat right in front of me. Our desks were pretty close, and I had to deal with this every single day. So one day I decided to change all that, and I took my Crayola scissors and I cut the back of his hair. That stuck up like a
no
peacock.
way.
Absolutely. So he grabs the back of his head and says, whoa, did you just cut my hair? And I said, oh, wait, hey, hold on, don't yell so loud, and you're welcome, by the way, just helped you out. And he said it so loud that Mrs. Bryant, the teacher, came over, and she says, what's going on? And this kid said, Thomas just cut my hair. What was I going to say? No, there's hair all over the ground, and she says, you can't cut other kids' hairs. Nobody told me that I couldn't cut their hair. And so anyway.
Yeah, that's not in the rules.
That's right. So she did the worst thing she could do to a 5th grader. I had to stay in from recess with her by myself, and so there we were eating my lunch with Mrs. Bryant, and but I had this disclaimer. My dad just died. My mom was getting remarried. I had these things. I felt like I had this disclaimer I could act out. And she said, Thomas, do you feel like the whole world's against you right now? And I laid into it, Rob, yeah, my dad died and everything. And She said, you really feel like everybody's against you right now? Yeah. And she said, looked me square in the eyes and said, Thomas, good. I'm glad you feel that way. Shocked me. She said, because you're so much better than that. You're not living up to your full potential. You're using these things as excuses in your life. And essentially what she's saying, Rob, is when you lose your excuses, Thomas, you will find your results in a way. And it shaped me. It changed me. I thought, I'm going to no more of this garbage. So I became like the teacher's pet. I got the principal's award and most valuable student of the school, whatever. And so it shaped me, changed me. So I'm grateful for these gifts that changed me and really called me out. And so anyway, that put me on a different path. And there's several other things. But anyway, grew up, went to college, played Division I tennis and soccer. And that was my key into getting into college. And, so very interested in athletics and things. And so anyway, started noticing our words and our language, that I could win victories. And when I wouldn't win is because I was speaking negativity. And so I just sort of had this gift, and I got into business and wanted to be an entrepreneur. I married my high school sweetheart 22 years ago, and we wanted to be entrepreneurs. We couldn't even spell entrepreneur. What am I talking about? But we wanted to do something and be in business. And so we started getting into business and eventually had some successes. And after some not successes, some struggles and things like that. And it all kind of came up to where in financial and insurance, really, we from one point to another, we made a decision, Rob. And I mentioned this story before, but 1 month we made $87 after 2 years of struggling in the insurance world. And I was out, man. I said, I'm out of here. And I went to the guy that hired me. I said, I'm quitting. He said, that's fine, Thomas. But the only way you fail is if you quit. Like, why do you got to say that to me? I'm a pretty competitive guy, And so he put it right back on me where it should have been, put it square on my shoulders, recognizing that I was not taking responsibility for my own success. And that's what happens oftentimes. We pawn it off, right? And right now, in today's day and age, it's easy to pawn off. All you got to say is, due to COVID, I don't have to be nice this week. You know what I mean? Due to COVID, I don't have to live up to my potential, whatever. And that's just a general example, but it's become very apparent. So he said, I don't think you've decided yet. So I decided to make a decision. And Ralph Waldo Emerson says it best. He said, when a decision is made, the universe conspires to make it happen. And
absolutely.
I decided to go for it, and I realized I was just toe dipping before instead of fully jumping in. And as a result of that, the next 4 months was significantly different. And I got mentorship. Mentorship is crucial. I went and hired a coach and a mentor to coach me. And over the next 4 months, we made 6 figures in 4 months, and doubled that for 5 years straight, and had a multi-million-dollar business in my mid-20s. And there was the company had over 10,000 insurance agents, and I was top 5 out of 10,000. And from that decision, 100 agents working in my brokerage, 3 different offices, and this is all in my mid-20s. And all of a sudden, the company caught wind of that, and they said, they had an annual conference, and there was 10,000 agents. This was the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas in 2004. I'll always remember this. And they said, come up here and tell your story. They said, here's the kid that went from $87 to, $124,000 in 4 months. Get on up here and tell your story. And I said, you just told my story, right? But but anyway, I got up there and they gave me 7 minutes to tell my story. And as a result of that, people started calling me that were in that audience around the country and Canada, and said, Thomas, you need to come speak to us. Tell us how you made that decision, train us, inspire us. And it just kept going and going, Rob. It's never stopped since 2004. So all of a sudden, I'm in an industry now that I didn't even know was an option. Didn't even know that, because people said, you just need to speak. And, oh, by the way, you got to write a book. And, well, what am I going to write a book about? Well, I found that my common message was our language that we bring about, we talk about. I have this radar, right? And you probably have it too. It's a radar. In 60 seconds or less, I can tell a person's BS. Like I got this
Yeah.
BS radar, right? And I think most people got it, but 60 seconds or less, I can tell a person's BS. And just by what they say. Now, just to clarify what BS means, some people might be going a different direction. It means belief system. I
Ah,
can tell.
yes.
Yeah. So Robbie, you're
That's
thinking
what I
something
thought
else.
you were going to say. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's same page. So listen, I could tell a person's belief system, and I interviewed over 500 people over the course of 8 years. And I would, in 60 seconds, I'd say, you're going to make it here or you're not by how you talk. Like it was that clear in my brain. And so I wrote the book. It took me 10 years to do it, but I wrote this book called The Liberty of Our Language Revealed. We bring about what we talk about. And as a result of that, finishing in 2018, it's taken me all over the world. And that's where you heard me speak, and I've spoken in 12 countries, 12 months in 2019. And it's in English, it's in Spanish. Working to be in Vietnamese. I've spoken there 6 times, and it's been absolutely humbling and inspiring to see what this movement has done. That when people change their language, they literally will change their results, their environment, and their life immediately. And it's just been amazing to see. And I'm along for the ride. I'm just the vessel and a messenger for it. So it's how we met, and it's why we're here. So in a short synopsis, that's how that came about.
Yeah, that's incredible. No, it's a great story, and I've read the book. My team's read the book, and I want to talk about that a little bit in a minute. But I want to start off with some of the things that you mentioned along the way that I found pretty interesting. So. You talked about, first of all, 5th grade, you got back on track. That's pretty cool in itself, because you see so many people, the story is, well, I got into college and I got where. So this teacher got you early. That was pretty good, right? Good timing, huh?
Yeah, it's way good timing. And I think as I understood her perception of, I had the power, to create rebellistic behavior and people would follow that, or I had the power to create positive leadership and people will follow that. And it was dramatic enough. Literally, Rob, my name was Tom up to that point, Tom and Tommy. I changed my name to Thomas.
Wow, like a biblical kind of a change almost. It was
Like I started signing Thomas. I'm no longer Tom. I left that old behind and became the new. Obviously, my full name's always been Thomas, but Tom and Tommy is what I've always been called. But I changed to Thomas, and I wanted a change. Yeah.
When I was around 7th grade, I tried to start going by Robert, and so I went to school. I was telling all my friends, I was saying, I'm Robert, I'm Robert. It only took a couple of times of my friends coming home and my parents called me Rob. I was like, all right, I give up. We're right back to Rob for a while. You know what I mean? But no, so more power to you for sticking to it.
Sure.
Well, as far as your public speaking, I mean, you definitely have a gift for this, and not everybody does. When I saw you speak, you obviously are able to make points in a way that gets people interested right off the bat. And one thing you did when when I was listening to your presentation that I thought was really powerful, and it's a great message for anybody who's an aspiring public speaker, is you started off and you talked about your failures a lot on the front end. And I felt like that disengaged any of the crowd. You don't come up and talk about how great you are. You talk about some of the failures along the way to your path. How did you get to be such a great public speaker? And was that by design, or is that just something you do naturally?
Great question. I never knew it was a profession, Rob. Really didn't. The people just kept asking me to speak. And then eventually people said, Thomas, this is what you should do. And I was literally saying, do what? No, be a speaker. And I'm saying, is that a job? I've got to support my family, And so I didn't know. What I did recognize early on in my life is that I loved the attention of holding a crowd, of saying something funny. People would gather around on the playground, and they'd say, "Hey, Tommy, tell us a joke, or tell us a story, or make us laugh." And people would gather around on the playground in a circle and listen to me talk. And just these, and I just thought, maybe that's normal, maybe it's not, probably not normal. but I just,
I don't think so.
Yeah. And it was just interesting because I somehow knew how to word things to where I can make people laugh. And it was this payoff for me. Like I enjoyed making them laugh. I enjoyed probably the attention. Although my natural self is pretty quiet. You know what I mean? It's like I flip something on.
Hmm.
But I enjoy solitude a lot as well. But I also know that when I speak, it's with purpose. And so I'm adding this up later in life, Rob, recognizing this is what happened. And so also when I was asked to speak in a community or a church, I mean, we'd have family reunions and there'd be my mom's brothers and sisters. She had 7 of them, uncles, aunts. They say, okay, Thomas, come on, tell us the story. And I'd be the entertainment. And so you start recognizing these little things of for whatever reason, people are listening, and I had a way to capture their emotion and capture their feeling and help them laugh. So anyway, how did that come about? I started also recognizing when I heard other speakers, whether it was in a community event, a business event, or a church event, whatever it might be, and I recognized, why do I listen to that man or woman versus not listen to another man or woman? What is it about their, why did that stir my emotion? I'm inspired. And I started categorizing them, that there's some speakers that are instructional, there's some that are motivational, and there are some that are inspirational. And I categorized those 3, and actually writing a book about it now, but that somehow I know how to inspire. I know how to dig into someone's inside and help them change things on the inside to where they want to change. Whereas motivation, just it's a smack, I can smack you into action for a couple of weeks, but you're going to need another dose in a couple, 2-3 weeks. But if you can inspire people and get them to feel something, then change happens. And so over the course, I started paying really a lot of attention to that, and really just copying speakers that arrived at my heart that way, and duplicating that. So starting off with, here's a saying, and you talked about failures, and I don't see them as failures. I see them as opportunities for growth. All about the language there. But a wise speaker once said, he said, Thomas, people will respect you for your successes, but they'll love you for your failures with a triumph. Not just
Right.
knocked down, but a get up afterwards. Because it's okay to get knocked down, but it's not okay to stay down. So when you talk about your knockdowns with a triumph, all of a sudden people can relate more, and they can say, okay, well, I've been knocked down, but he got back up. I can get back up, and so that's that feeling, and it's a connectivity that I am humanized. And so there's all these patterns to speaking. I coach people on to do seminars on it, just on speaking. Because that sort of fell into place where I had to start coaching people, because I'd speak and then come up and say, how did you do that? You got to coach me. Well, I don't have really a program. Doesn't matter how much you want. So I throw out a number and they'd pay it. I say, okay, I guess I'm a coach on this now. Right. And so,
Right.
so now I have a whole company, you know what I mean, called Say to Achieve, where we have a coaching program and speaking and all that stuff. But that these things have just plucked me out, and so I know I'm doing what I was called to do, and that's a vocation. Vocation is a calling, not just a job or some employment type thing.
Yeah, no, amazing and well put. And that was the thing I took away from it, because you had tremendous successes, obviously, such a great accomplishment, and with the book and everything you've done. And I just love the way you had introduced it as a opportunity for improvement. So I'm trying to learn too as we talk here, right? Well, that's pretty cool stuff. When you wrote your book, and let's talk about the liberty of our language revealed. You wrote your book. You said it took 10 years. Tell me kind of how that works itself together. Do you start with a structure and you know exactly what you're going to write, but you just have to fill it in, or did it kind of come to you bit by bit as you're doing it?
So I wrote a book because people said I need to write a book, and they said, if you're going to be a speaker, you got to write a book. And so I started writing the book. It's real fancy. I opened up a Word document on my computer and started saying, well, what would it be about? And I knew the language was going to come, but I also, I wanted to write like I speak. So Rob, you've heard me
Hmm.
speak and others have. I speak in stories. You notice that? Um,
Yes.
I speak and I keep you engaged that way to where you don't want to move, right? You're pegged to your seat. That's what people say, like, gosh, one lady I was speaking in Santa Barbara, California, she goes, man, I had to use the restroom so bad. And then they introduced you and you got up. And within the first 60 seconds, I couldn't move and I still had to use the bathroom. And for 2 hours, I didn't move. And that was her testimonial. He'll keep you there if you have
Wow.
to go to the bathroom even. Like, thank you. Right. So, um,
Great.
so, so how do I do that? It's just stories. And so I knew I wanted to write a story, not just a bark book, because those are the ones that intrigued me. A
Mhm.
bark book, to clarify, is a book. There's plenty of self-development, self-help books, Rob, that say, do this, be this, change that, have that. It's barking, and eventually our ears go away, right? We stop listening to a bark. We tune it out. And so a lot of these self-help books, halfway through or quarter way through, I got the idea. You ever feel like
Yeah.
that? I get the idea and you don't, well, I'm going to muscle through the rest of it. So I wanted my book to be so intriguing to where from the first page, 2 pages, it kept you gripped. And that's probably the number one review I get from people is I couldn't put it down. And so by design, because I want you to go through on a story. And so that has to do with speaking as well. When it's an intriguing story synopsis and people want to know what the result is or what's going to happen, they will stay engaged. So with the creativity that I have, I've always been able to create stories. I created a story based on actual experiences in my life and started writing it, I guess 12 years ago now, or 13 years ago. And I started with the story, got going, and it was really a divine thing with me where I felt like God was saying, set this aside for now. Set this aside for now. But I thought, well, if I'm going to be a speaker, I got to write a book. And I struggled with that a little bit. But I continued to pray about it, and I listened and set it aside and didn't continue writing the book. But then I went and lived life. I went and started speaking and training sales teams and getting all this experience. And then about 8 years later, I feel like God was saying, pick it up again.
Mhm.
And honestly, I was at a point, Rob, where if I never wrote the book, I was okay with it. I was just feel like I was being obedient. And I picked it up again. And the stories that I write about, many of them happened within that course of 8 years. So I had to have the experiences in order to write about them. I could
Hmm.
have written a book, and in my perspective, it could have been great, but it wouldn't have been the book that it is now. And so I'm grateful for listening. I'm grateful for the patience. There was a whole lesson to me in that. And then it came out at the right time. And that's just a lesson for me and perhaps those that are listening here that have patience.
Yeah.
Let the timing be the right timing. And just to get something out, do it right the first time and you'll always be right type thing. And
Absolutely.
so when it's come out, then it's just taken off, and I can see the hand of the divine in all of it now. And so that's why I say I'm just a vessel, and I'm just really an instrument, because literally every chapter, I'm telling you, I cannot take credit for this, but I would pray about it and I'd say, where do I go? Where do I go from here? And so there's a chapter in there, and you've read it. It's called The Liberating Language of Forgiveness, Rob.
Hmm.
Do you think I ever planned or thought of writing a chapter on forgiveness in a language book? No, wasn't my idea. But there's a lot of healing in that chapter for a lot of people, so
Hmm.
it took this course beyond me. So now I'm just the messenger, buddy. And so I'm just along for the ride.
Yeah.
The vision is to significantly improve the language and mindset of more than 1 billion people worldwide. And it's something I'll be doing always, because it's an infinite game to be able to accomplish it. And
Well,
I know that any chance I have to share the message, I'll do it.
one thing I will tell you, so and by the way, it is a riveting book. The story got us in immediately, and you don't want to put it down. You want to see what's going to happen next. But as you break the book into sections, there's a great message within each of those sections. And that was one of the reasons I chose to. And if you are a business manager out there and you have some people underneath you that you want to get a word out to, and you want to give them something positive that can help them train their staffs, I can highly recommend this book. I did it with my team. We did a little 4-week series on it, and I used some of the things that you just talked about. So I'm actually going to go there now. You talked about the forgiveness thing, right? So I love this story, and I'm not going to say it as eloquently as you put it, but it was something to the effect of the best way to get rid of an enemy is to make them into a friend. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, interesting. That, excuse me, I had a high school teacher, my sophomore high school teacher. His name was Mr. Jones, and he, every week, would put up a different quote. A lot of times by famous people that we understood, but just something powerful quote. And I found myself memorizing these quotes in high school. I found myself being intrigued that I felt power when I did that, almost like a friend, that when I would memorize one of these quotes, it would come up as a friend in a time of need. So the one you're referring to, and the one that I definitely remember, one of the quotes he put on was by Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln said, "Have I not destroyed an enemy when I've made him my friend?" Is that the one you're referring to?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And so in life, here I'm a sophomore in high school, so whatever age that is, 15, 16. And later I'm married. And I have 2 children at home. I'm coming home one day after a long day at the office, and I'm in the yielding position at a green light, waiting for oncoming traffic before I can turn to go into my neighborhood at home. And I have the go ahead, and I go, and I didn't see a guy walking. He's in black. Okay. He wasn't wearing invisible clothing. It's nighttime, but he's out for a walk. Dangerous for him to do that. Didn't really see him. But the moment I did see him, it shocked me, and I sort of slowed down quickly and recognized him and sort of held up my hand to say sorry. And then I kept going. Well, this offended him that I didn't see him. He took his water bottle and threw it as hard as he could against my car. And I kept going. I thought, did he just throw? That sounded loud. I got out and looked at the car, and he put a dent in my car with his water bottle. And I looked up at him. He picked up his water bottle off the ground and looked at me like, "You got what you deserved." Seriously? Did that just happen? So he just keeps walking. And then, look, I'm a sports guy. I've always got sports equipment in the back of my trunk. I had a softball bat, tennis rackets, golf clubs. Immediately my mind went to use those sports things for something other than what they were designed for. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a fighter. Look, but I flip my car around. And I go around to that light, and one of those side road lights that kind of take longer than normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a main street light, and he just keeps walking, and I'm thinking it's on. Like I don't fight, but this guy seriously had no right to do that. I didn't see him. He was wearing black clothing. It's his fault. Blah blah blah. I'm having this, this angel on one shoulder, devil on the other shoulder moment. Yeah. And I was trying to submit on who to listen to. And on this red light is not relinquishing green until I get it together. Then all of a sudden, here I am, more than 15 years after high school. I opened up my mind to what is the best option here? Like, what should I do? What would be the best course of action? And the moment, it was really the angel talking. And the moment I did that, this quote from a sophomore in high school that Mr. Jones put on the board was this: "Thomas, have I not destroyed an enemy when I made him my friend?" And it's almost like Abraham Lincoln was sitting in my car. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was that clear. I heard it that audible. And I'm grateful for that. And the moment I heard this, I can make a friend or an enemy immediately. And the moment I finally gave in to, no, I'd rather have a friend, the light turned green. And so then I catch up to this guy, and he sees me coming. He's ready to fight. Like, dukes are up with this guy. And I didn't know exactly what I was going to say, but I knew, make a friend, make a friend. And I go out and I just extend my hand walking up to him, and he's sort of charging me, Rob.
Hmm.
And he sees that I'm not wanting to fight, but I have my hand, and I just said, I'm so sorry. I did not see you coming. I'm truly sorry. And my hand's just hanging out in the air. He's not grabbing it. And he finally just hangs his head and says, I'm sorry too. I'm still got my hand out there. And he said, I just had a fight with my wife, an argument. And I left fuming from the house. So I wasn't planning on going on a walk.
Yeah.
And I guess I took out my anger on your car. And I'm sorry too. And then he finally shook my hand. And I knew I had a friend in the moment. And I ended up saying, well, better my car than your wife.
Wow. I mean, it's a powerful thing because for you to do that to a stranger, where you had every reason to react differently, as some people might have, you were able to turn around and make it into a positive. And a lot of what I do is I come back to bringing this back to the workplace and how can we be more effective as teammates, leaders, wherever we are. I thought that was a great story for my group to understand that, when somebody comes in and they're having a bad day, and believe me, from my experience, everybody's got something going on in their personal life,
Sure.
almost no matter what's happening. If you can remember that and extend the olive branch, I guess, then that goes a long way. So that was very cool. And it kind of reminds me of this formula I think you had. I don't want to mess it up, but I think it was event plus reaction equals outcome. Did I get that right?
Yeah, E plus R equals O. E
Right.
plus R equals O. So you're spot on. Event plus our response is equal to the outcome. So reaction in a sense can be to react is a negative
Sure,
sense if we
sure.
dive into it, but our response to the event will always determine the outcome. And it's actually the only thing we have control over is that response. And if I attached a little word to the end of response called ability, we've actually been given the response ability to determine our own outcome. So the moment I give that responsibility to the event, literally, Rob, I become powerless.
Mm-hmm.
If the event
Correct.
has control over me, then I become powerless. But if I take control of the response to that event, it determines the outcome. I'll be speaking in 2 cities this week, Oklahoma and somewhere else, Iowa, and to some big groups. And I don't ride my bike. I fly, right? So, and I'm grateful for planes, but sometimes on planes, just to give you an example, this E plus R equals O, some people will, the stewardess will come out, the pilot will come out and say, ladies and gentlemen, we're sorry, there's something mechanically wrong with the plane. Give us 30 to 45 minutes. We're going to get it fixed and blah, blah, blah. I love to just take out my camera. I get so much material from people's responses here. People are like, kicking the chair in front of them. The airline just ruined my life. And, some guy's calling his mom in New Jersey and she says, I told you never to fly, right? And there's another guy who's just reading the newspaper and just, whatever. And so everybody's response is different. Some it ruined their life and some just understand. And to me, my response is this: I am so grateful they found the air on the ground and not while we're in the air.
It's a great point.
Right? Like they found the mechanical air on the ground instead of up in the air. Hello? Like what are we even thinking? Of course we're grateful. But people's response, it can ruin their day, ruin their life, or have perspective. So you're right. It's a powerful formula, and we truly determine our own outcomes. This pandemic's a great teller of people's responses to events. Do they let the event have all the power? It makes you powerless? Or do you take control and say, regardless of how things are, it's going to be great, There's a story inside in The Language of Those Who Win, that chapter, and there's a gentleman named Dan Gable. And Dan Gable is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. He has 300-something wins and 1 loss his whole life.
Wow.
And if you know wrestling, there's a thing in wrestling where when you take down a person initially, it's called a shoot. So when they shoot to try to take a person down, that's what it's called in wrestling, if people aren't familiar. But his philosophy was this: because if you shoot and take the person down, you get a point or several points or however it works. But if you counteract it, you can also get a point if someone tries to shoot and take you down, and you can get a point as well. Well, his philosophy is this, and it makes so much sense. He says, I shoot, I score. You shoot, I score. Either way, I score. And so apply that to life. Our response to life is, hey, economy's good, we win. Economy's not so good, we win. There's a pandemic, we win. Regardless, we're going to win. And so that's his mentality. His response is always great, something's going to come. Always great, something's going to come. We're going to figure it out. And it's, that's even biblical. I mean, I didn't make that up. That's a Romans 8:28 thing, right? That's, all things work together for good to them that love God. So it's, everything's always working for us if you see it that way. If everything's always against you, that's your response, and you will play out your life that way as well. But we have total control of our outcomes.
Wow, that's powerful stuff for sure. And there's a lot of other amazing stories in the book. Of course, we could probably talk about it for hours. Some of my favorites, and again, I know you don't have time to go through all of it, but meeting the real life Rudy, things like this. I mean, there is some stuff in there that just blew me away. I love it when you talked about talking to water and the energy you give off. So maybe I'm doing some teases here for those who want to read the book. But I'm going to skip over to something now. Tell me, are you working on any other books right now, or what's up next for Thomas Blackwell?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So as people read the book, they'll recognize that there's actually a sequel to the book. So read the book and you'll know that there's a sequel. And so that's what I'm working on right now, is the sequel to The Liberty of Our Language Revealed.
Nice. Do we have another 10 years or so to wait for this, or is it going to go a little quicker?
That's a great question. I don't have an end date. I'm letting it unfold as it is. We were blessed with 2020, and my whole year was built out with opportunities to speak around the world, and now they're just now coming to fruition. So what I'm saying is, with all when a great movie comes out, the sequel doesn't come out even 6 months later, right? Exactly. That movie lets it gather the whole, so hundreds of thousands of copies are getting out there, and when it hits a certain point, that's my mark of the sales of that book. Then I'll pop the sequel on the world, type thing. Does that make sense? So. Oh,
it makes perfect sense. I'm excited. So you have to, I got to tell you, it was great cliffhanger at the end of the last one. So that was a lot of fun for me. I would ask you, kind of as we get towards the back end of this, if you had somebody that said, look, I want to get into a career as a public speaker and maybe some of the stuff you've done, what would you tell them? I mean, would you have any advice as far as, what kind of work it takes, how many hours you got to put in, just anything you want them to know?
It's a wonderful field. And one, if you've had that inclination, or if you have that feeling that is a direction you want to go, I would just tell you, I 100% believe that you're capable of doing that. And if you have a message, a lot of times this happens, that people feel like they have a message that they want to tell the world on a grand scale or whatever it might be, then go for it. I feel like you're having those feelings for a reason. And if that is a direction that you feel led and guided to, study speakers that you enjoy, that you resonate with, and copy their styles. There is a system on speaking, and that's actually what a lot of my sequel is about. The book is about that, and the effective levels of speaking and teaching. So I also say, get a coach, get someone that you respect that does it very well and captures, because the straightest way I can put it is this, Rob, is that if you're good and people want to hear you, it'll never stop. It will just keep going and going. If you're not, it'll stop pretty fast. So that's it, because you could want to do it, but if nobody wants to hear you, or if you're just not arriving or connecting, nobody's going to want to book you. And that's been the blessing. Anytime I speak somewhere, I'll get 2, 3, 4 more opportunities to speak. Here we spoke, I don't forget when I was even there, it might have been a year or something. And here we're doing something, and I've done several others just from that time I spoke there in Myrtle Beach. And by the way, I'm speaking there again on January 27th. I'm coming to do a couple more events. Yeah, so I'll
Wonderful.
be there open to the public as well. So January 27th, I'll be there again. Looking forward to it. So that it just keeps going. You know what I mean? So have a message, be clear, and then start speaking. Get out there and speak for free. You know, anybody. I always say yes. If someone says, "Hey, we don't have a budget," great, I'll speak anyway. So you just start doing that. You start finding your voice and your message, and it becomes refined and refined. So it's just like anything, just like a sport. Just you have to practice, and when you get a lot of reps, you know, I've done thousands of them now all over the world. I'm not the same speaker I was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Absolutely.
I understand things I better, and so just like anything, just like a great construction person, a great roofer, whatever, the person who has 15 years experience isn't the same as the person that just started a year ago. So it's all the same.
You have to have a passion for it.
Yeah.
I agree. I think there's a lot of perseverance that goes along with it for sure. And you said something there that made me think of, I graduated college with a bachelor's degree in business administration and with a marketing specialization. And I know after I graduated, I was in that little, what I like to call post-college purgatory, but it's just kind of a little joke. I was kind of like stuck in between, college and my career. And so I went out and I started doing free marketing surveys for people. And I just basically said, look, I got this degree. So I would go out to businesses and say, hey, let me, interview your customers and we'll see where we can make some improvements. And I wasn't making any money on it, but it was getting my name out there. And I think sometimes you just have to take that step to just practice what you love, and if you really believe in yourself, go for it. So that's kind of what I think I heard there from you just now.
Spot on. It takes all sorts of effort, and now there, things are organizing. Some months, literally, I had 20 events in 1 month, like 20 different, 1 month, and that's happened. But that took time to build up. So have patience and understanding that anything of value is going to be worth the effort. Mm-hmm. And this is a word change. Let's do right now, because I'm all about changing language, change your life. People say it's hard, and hard is weak. It's powerless. Mm-hmm. If I came to my team and say, hey, let's go for this goal and it's going to be hard, nobody would get out of bed. But if I say it's worth the effort, so change hard to worth the effort. So life is, life is hard. No, life is worth the effort. Speaking is hard. No, speaking is worth the effort. Marriage is hard. No, marriage is worth the effort. Do you see the difference? So anything of value is 100% worth the effort. And if you show me anybody who's accomplished anything, you included or whatever, or whoever in this organization, I'll show you someone that has put forth the effort and stuck with it. And great things happen when you do that. Stay in it long enough to see the fruits. There's a famous story called 3 Feet from Gold in Think and Grow Rich. And it's about a person that stopped digging for gold 3 feet from where one of the richest veins of gold was. You know what I mean? So you keep digging, you keep going. If you believe in it, be detached from the financials of it. If you're doing it for the money, it'll be short-lived. There's a wise religious man. He said, people will work hard for money, but they'll work harder for another person. And they'll work hardest of all for a cause they believe in. Wow. So when you have a cause that's attached in the center of everything you're doing, it'll never feel like work. How is whatever you're doing contributing, right? Or how are you contributing? And that's never worked. So there's some of the keys to putting forth the effort and being worth it, and just believing in it long enough to see the fruits.
Fantastic tips. Thomas Blackwell, you're going to be back in Myrtle Beach on January 27th, so definitely would love to see you when you come back to town, and anybody who's interested, feel free to look us up and we can get you that information as well. It's The Liberty of Our Language Revealed. Fantastic book. I recommend it highly to any of the listeners out there. And Thomas, I greatly appreciate you taking the time to be on with me today.
My pleasure. It's an honor to be here with you. Thank you for the opportunity, Rob.
All right. Thank you, too. Have a great day, all right? And this is Rob Clemons signing out for Crown and Connections.